It is the early 23rd century. Humanity's thirst for progress has caused massive cities to spread outwards and consume the natural world. However, they could not maintain the sheer size of this concrete empire and began to succumb beneath it. Pavements cracked, metal rusted, and economic inflation set in. The question is, what happens when you combine derelict sites, hover bikes, and economic desperation? You get
Airframe Ultra.
Dramatic intro aside, the closed beta for Airframe Ultra is available for a few days right now, so I thought I would get a video out to explore what this beta has available and provide a small overview about what the full game could offer. Firstly, what the hell is Airframe Ultra? Well, it's a fast-paced racing game made by Video Cult, the creators of Rainworld. It is inspired by those racing/combat games like Twisted Metal. It features a character creator, large arsenal of weapons, and online multiplayer, as well as local couch co-op support. Disclaimer, I know the footage of this game I'm about to show has low bitrate. That's because of the game's style. Hopefully in the full game there is a better way of recording footage with good bitrate. Just pretend the pixely nature of my recordings are like part of the style. Anyway, enjoy the video. Firstly, let's talk about the titular airframes. These crazy hover bikes may look like unreliable rust buckets, yet they control amazingly well, allowing you to slice just inches above the floor with great control. The airframe accelerates fast, reaching 100 km per hour in only 2 seconds. Its top speed is double that, yet it's very hard to attain without boosting or downward inclines. The airframe's brake is also awesome, having the rider pull up the front of the airframe to reduce its forward thrust. This is great for correcting maneuvers, as it's easy to readjust your airframe in this position. Holding brake down and staying still will also power off the airframe, causing it to stop hovering and fall to the ground. I know it makes logical sense it would do that, but I think it's a neat touch. Another thing you can do with the brake is actually a movement tech. Yes, there is already advanced movement tech in the game. If you brake while turning in a circle, you actually see the speedometer increase without gaining speed. Keep turning for as long as you like until you want to let go, and then release the brake and accelerate. This releases all the unused engine power at once. You can actually do this without braking, but it's a little harder to control. Plus, gaining too much speed actually causes the airframe to overheat, capping the maximum speed until the driver stops accelerating, likely to stop any crazy acceleration methods like this one from being too powerful. Back to a more simple feature, you can gain lift by tapping the jump button, which can help keep your momentum and dodge obstacles. Be careful not to faceplant into metal poles, which is a surprisingly common occurrence. Turns out that airframes are actually incredibly dangerous and only driven by insane people. Not only can you eat metal beams by jumping into them, hitting a wall or vehicle at high speeds also causes heavy damage, and these things love to explode and burn up. You're basically piloting a live stick of dynamite. Lots of power, but somewhat risky. In one of the lore excerpts of a character preset, there are actually kiddie airframes mentioned, which means corporations are selling these things to children, very representative of the dire state the world is in. You can also boost on the airframe, consuming a boost charge in the process. These boosts give tremendous speed, yet you only legally get 3. However, illegally, you can continue to boost at the cost of your airframe's durability, which is as dangerous as it sounds, but it can give you the speed you need to get ahead. You can also kick racers and target dummies from your airframe. The direction of the kick is the opposite way your character is leaning, making it hard to figure out at first, but satisfying once you get used to it. The reason for this reversal is it can actually be used to kick off walls, being awesome and effective, giving you lots of speed. Your character can also crouch down on the airframe. Not really sure about the benefits of this right now, but it could help with avoid getting hit by various weapons, which I'll cover now. I won't go into all of the weapons since there are about 24, but I'll cover my favourites. Firstly, the melee weapons, starting with the traffic sign, which is a massive sharpened metal stick. Its secondary ability is that it can be used as a vaulting javelin by planting it in the ground and vaulting using it, giving the airframe great height. This allows you to make jumps the base airframe hop cannot do. Next is the machete, a gnarly weapon that can be thrown at high speeds on alternate use, which is very terrifying and reminiscent of a certain alien creature's combat style. Another weapon is the chain, which I love due to its realistic swirling movement. The game's physics really shine with this weapon. It is able to grab onto other players or physics objects and drag them around. Its alternate use will throw the chain, which will wrap around other players it hits, subduing them briefly. Finally, for melee weapons, we have my favourite, the beam cutter. This thing is a laser beam once likely used as a manufacturing tool, now used as a deadly laser sword, capable of setting enemies ablaze. It has the coolest alternate use, where the driver bends the other side of the laser, allowing it to be used as a crazy laser beam gun instead of a sword. I love how the driver attempts to break the cutter by slamming it against the airframe's chassis, which does physical damage to the airframe, which is a neat detail. Now onto ranged weapons. All ranged weapons have their alternate use to be a toggleable reticle, which is kind of a missed opportunity since you can't like fan the hammer on the revolver or other cool gun mechanics. Firstly, there are the standard guns, the SMG, the shotgun, and so on, which are all self-explanatory in what they do. But then there is the rebar fastener, which was probably used in a manufacturing setting like the beam cutter. Here it's used as a ranged weapon that shoots big bolts of rebar, impaling anyone in range with meter-long bits of metal. Plasma pistols are another futuristic weapon, shooting balls of plasma that erupt into deadly flames upon impact. Side note, the flames effect in this game are beautiful, they look so amazing. Hopefully the compression doesn't make them look bad. And the final ranged weapon I want to cover is the minigun. Yeah, I don't really have to say anything about this one. There are also throwables which can be picked up and used alongside your main weapon. My favourites are the shuriken, which release edgy purple explosions after a while, and the flashbang.
Hey, you're finally awake.
Now onto my favourite part of the game. You can actually get off the bikes and move around separately from them. On-foot controls are much different from the airframe, but still feel really good to control. It reminds me of Slugcat's movements, where it feels kinda janky to begin with, but it becomes second nature and responsive once you get the hang of them. The on-foot movement is actually more complex than the airframe from what I've seen. It uses inverse kinematics, a form of procedural animation, which makes the drivers, or now I guess walkers' legs, dynamically touch the ground below. This does look goofy when walking and running, but feels responsive to inputs. You can crouch just like you can on the airframe, and while this doesn't seem useful at first, it's the core to a bunch of movement techniques you can employ. Your character also sprints when spamming the boost button, which I didn't like at first, but it's actually kind of grown on me. And the input window for pressing the button is forgiving, so you don't have to spam hard at all. You may have noticed the grey wheel in the middle of the screen. That is the dreaded stamina meter. Doing too many fun things causes the meter to fill, and your character will become tired until you slow your movements. I do feel it is a bit too restrictive, but since there is a focus on PvP, it is understandable. What I do like about this stamina system is that there are unique animations for when the character gets tired, and it will actually mess up some of the advanced movements while your exhaustion is close to full. This is very annoying in the middle of combat, but it's funny to see the character stumble around. For the basic movement, there is mantling, sliding, and rolling, all staples of gaming at this point, but they are executed well. Rolling around feels great. I would talk about it more, but I don't want the video to be 10 minutes of me rolling around in the mud. There is also swimming movement in the game, despite the current maps having very few deep pools of water. The swimming doesn't have anything outside of the paddling and a fast swim, but it amazes me that it's even in the game at this state to begin with. Moving on to combat, the kick is available without weapons, and it has a ton of different variations. Left kick, right kick, forward kick, back kick, roundhouse, aerial roundhouse, and combo roundhouse are the ones I'm aware of at the moment. I haven't tested all of these in PvP, so I don't know how to do any crazy aerial combos yet, but I'm sure others will figure it out before me. There is a huge skill ceiling to all of the on-ground movement. I accidentally performed a dive move during testing and I don't know how to replicate it. I'm looking forward to experimenting with the ground movement, and it'll be awesome to have a couple of parkour courses in the full release or future betas. With the core gameplay basics out of the way, let's get into the online PvP. which you either need to create your own racer in the character creator or select one of the presets. I'm not going to delve into detail about this character creator since it's very standard. However, I do want to summarize the different airframes you can pick, as that is one of the character creator options. The standard airframe is the blunt nose, which is the classic middle slider vehicle. The cruiser is much more beefier and hard to control, but does very well on flat roads and has a very long boost. The hopper is smaller than the blunt nose, giving it better maneuverability and a superior jump, for the cost of a slightly weaker engine and 40% less health. Lastly, the Vector, which has upgraded and efficient boosts, but is weaker than the blunt nose in most other senses. I personally like the hopper the most because of its great jump, but I do want to try and master the others. Each of them has a significant impact on gameplay, which is cool to see. Most racing game cars seem to just have a couple stats change between each car, but here it alters the entire playstyle of the airframe. Finally, the online aspect. It is peer-to-peer, I think, so you have to connect to the person hosting the lobby. I think there's also netcode in place, so connectivity is quite robust. From my experience, there have been some laggy moments, and rarely some desync, but overall it's been a really solid experience. Lots of AAA games struggle to even achieve decent connectivity at launch, so big ups to the beta of an indie game for getting this right. Onto the two online modes. First is the sandbox, where you are free to move around the warehouse map and mess around with the weapons and airframes, which is what most of the footage from this video is from. The map is really good for letting players experiment with the airframes, do parkour, test weapons, or beat each other up without win conditions nor time limits. The more interesting mode is the main mode, or I like to call it the circuit mode, which is a race with added gladiatorial combat sections. How it works is that players will race each other to the arenas, the first player there getting 3 points, second and third players getting 2 and 1 points respectively. Players must fight one another in a small enclosed space for an amount of time, earning points when they kill another player. This race to each of the arenas and fighting inside of them continues until a player reaches the win condition, which is usually 25 points. A secondary aspect of this circuit mode is the economy. Players can pick up money throughout the maps, either as classic floaty dollar bills, or the first to touch the green or yellow beams, which give a large sum of money. Players can also loot money off of other players with kill streaks, which drops about 5 or 6 money pickups. Money can be spent on weapons or items, with the better weapons costing a pretty penny, like the katana or minigun, with the not so good ones being dirt cheap, like the battle bricks. This simple money system adds quite a bit of player choice, either spending money to get basic weapons immediately, or saving up for higher quality weapons of your choice. I actually like this system, but it can screw you over sometimes, especially when other players have powerful guns and you have like $50 and 4 bricks to your name. I think it could be balanced where players with point lead have slightly more expensive items when compared to players with low points, maybe with the underdog even getting a discount. A really neat mechanic is that if you run out of lives, which never happens on default settings, you will actually become a drone and will be able to fly around the map freely at insane speeds. The drones actually can collide with the environment and can be destroyed if shot or whacked by airframe drivers. I love how even spectator mode in this game is stylish and so fun to use. As for the circuit mode as a whole, I do like the blend of racing and arena, although it would be amazing to have separate game modes where it's either arena only or race only, as sometimes I want to only play the racing to chill out, or the arena to attempt to murk other players. The only big complaint I have about this mode is in one of the maps. There is an on-foot arena where airframes cannot enter, meaning you have to continue on foot, fighting others in the arena without your airframe. The issue arises when you have to slow down, get off your airframe, and physically run into the arena, all while other players are trying the same thing, through the same small entrance, leading to this weird awkward moment where all the players are crab bucketing together trying to get into the arena, usually without weapons or space to fight one another. This slows the game down quite a lot and is just kind of annoying to do. Not to mention you have to leave the arena the same way you enter, run back to your airframe, which could be far away, and start driving, still with every other player doing the same. I think instead of a solid wall where airframes cannot pass, there could be like an EMP tower that disables airframes while they are in the arena for the duration that the combat section is active. It would deactivate once the race starts up again and maybe give the players a movement speed boost so they can reach the airframe quickly and pick up the race much more swiftly. Finally, let's talk about the lore. I touched on the setting briefly in my opening, but the game likely takes place in the 23rd century, as the latest known date is 2223 as mentioned in one of the race's bios. The game takes place in a location known as the Megacity West, likely found on the west coast of the USA, for obvious reasons. It is implied through the sheer scale and diversity of the maps that this location is ginormous, possibly taking up literally the whole west coast, and going far inland too. It has a population of 2.5 billion people, according to one of the trailers, which I actually think is pretty low considering the stuff I'm gonna mention later on. But it's still a huge number, especially for a single quote-unquote city. We know the names of many regions of the Megacity West, or MCW as it's abbreviated. The first being the Texas-Cali-Zigo Zone, which unabbreviated is the Texas-California Zero Government Zone. This could imply that this area spans the distance between California and Texas, which is strikingly not that impossible considering the population. But the Vector airframe model also mentions CanMex, which is possibly Canada-Mexico abbreviated, which would then intersect with the Texi-Cali zone if they were territories. These dual place names may also be new areas named after their benefactors or founders, with the states or countries forming an alliance to build a region of a megacity, or even just a large conglomerate that adopted the country names as an airframe model is named after one, suggesting they are the ones to manufacture the airframes, or the airframes are manufactured in that location. Okay, that was way too much annoying and weird analysis into what the cool names could mean, but coming off the back of Rainworld, stuff like this is fun to analyse. Although we don't have confirmation, the chasm map likely takes place in the Texi-Cali-Zigo zone, as the brief description of the zone on the Steam page does match up with the map's visuals. It says here the hulking archaeologies of the Texi-Cali-Zigo zone. As you can see, hulking archaeologies seems like an accurate descriptor of the chasm map, as it contains literal cities stacked on top of each other. Yes, every single little crevice in the walls of the chasm likely has a full city in them, with complete infrastructure like drains and highways, and remember, this is only a single zone of the Megacity West. One dystopian aspect of these so-called pancake cities is the fact that natural light only touches the outer buildings of the chasm. The rest is shrouded in darkness or blaring fluorescent lights. As for the chasm itself, there seems to be a river at the bottom. Maybe the pancake cities couldn't be built over it due to stability issues. It could have also been opened up as a runway, as planes actually fly through the chasm. It is so wide it can seriously be used as a highway for flying vehicles. I doubt that is anywhere near safe at all, as there are presumably bridges, drones, and comically long clotheslines that could easily cause a plane crash. But hey, I don't control the air traffic. You can also see little towns or even cities at the bottom of the river. It would be awesome to have a map by the river so you could look up and see the sheer scale of the chasm, as it does go on for literal miles. I seriously can't get over how cool of a location the chasm is. And one final detail that gives us a significant piece of world building is the graffitis on the side of the chasm. One side has a massive graffiti with the words "The Permian" written on it, and the other side is the Triassic. Now this could just be cute nicknames for each side of the chasm, which would be awesome, but they actually reference the Permian-Triassic Extinction Event, which is the name of the most lethal extinction event in all of the Earth's history. I know it's a bit of a curveball, but this is true. These words are also surrounded by a bunch of graffitis of dinosaurs. I think it might be a bit pretentious, but the dinosaurs could represent the descendants of the creatures that died in this event. They're sort of like the next generation, so to speak. I think this event is where the map is inspired from, as all of the creatures that died in the Permian-Triassic extinction eventually became fossil fuel millions of years later, due to geological processes that involved layers of sediment building on top of each other, and suddenly the pancake cities make sense. This map could be symbolic of society kind of building on itself and layering, being literal civilizations layered on top of each other. Rainworld also has themes of layered civilizations, most evident in the subterranean and its echo, so it makes sense that the same theme is explored in this game too. The other maps, Warehouse and Storm Drain, have significantly less lore that I could find, but take place in the same region as one another. Warehouse is an old storage site that has been taken over by airframe racers to practice, with a bunch of concrete slopes to master and large footballs to mess around with. My favourite part of the map is actually this little house in the middle of the grass at the bottom. Like, imagine living here on an industrial site, no other houses around. I hate to use this word, but this house kind of feels liminal, with it being so isolated from other human utilities. The last map is Storm Drain, which takes place in a storm drain, unsurprisingly. The drain seems to be in disuse, as many shipping containers and piles of trash reside at the floor of the drain, not to mention a few shanty towns constructed in the crevices, which either means this place doesn't get any floodwater, or the people moving in here are insane. I think it's the latter. The storm drain seems to be located near to the sea, as the iconic concrete tetrapods found on coasts can be seen washed up in this drain. Clearly not effective at preventing erosion if it ended up here. As I mentioned before, the Warehouse and Storm Drain maps share a skybox, so it's likely they're in the same region of the Megacity West as each other. possibly being adjacent to the coastline. Finally, I want to talk about the content that could be in the full game. I'm mostly looking forward to the possible single-player mode, where we could explore the megacity west at our own leisure, race AI opponents, get into street fights, etc. I think this world has so much potential to explore outside of the online races. Hopefully it's not too ambitious or hard to implement, but I am excited if it's still on the table. There are definitely more maps coming, like the skyscraper one. It is likely situated in the LA region. Yes, it's spelt like that. The strange hanging garden seems nice and peaceful with probably breathable air. I'm also looking forward to the quarry map, which could have moving conveyor belts and rocks and stuff. As for the gameplay, all it really needs is polish and more balancing and it would be perfect. Sadly, there are only a handful of sound effects and zero music currently in the beta, but this will definitely be fixed in the full version. I think Video Cult is cooking hard. They are incredibly talented and it really shows in this beta. I've genuinely had so much fun playing with others in the last few days, and even just driving around by myself to record footage was fun. That's all I wanted to say about the Airframe Ultra beta. I'm excited for the full release or even future betas, and I hope this disjointed video gives people a good idea about what Airframe Ultra is in case they missed the beta. Thanks for watching, and if you don't mind me, I got a race to win. Like, you can see a pterodactyl here. You can see the weird, I think that's a T-Rex. There's a giant squid that's kind of dinosaur-like.